As the world races to contain the third wave of the pandemic, what are the topmost concerns on investors' minds? What sectors are most attractive to foreign investors? Ease of doing business globally. What does an improved ranking mean to Malaysia? Malaysia's handling of the pandemic, making the right decisions. These and more in just a moment. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Money Matters with me, Zahir Kelvin Ong Abdullah. We have in the studio with us Chief Executive Officer of InvestKL Corporation, Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kelvin. Good to be here.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Now, as I mentioned before the montage, Malaysia and the world basically is racing to address the spread of the pandemic. So how do investors basically look at this?
That's a pertinent question at the moment, Kelvin. What has been happening in the past year is a truly unprecedented event, both for the public and private sector. More so from an investor perspective, they are looking at certainty and continuity. Certainty in a sense of the activities that can be done, the policies and guidelines and SOPs included. Certainty with regards to how they can operate in a safe manner. With all these two combined together, it also culminates towards ease of doing business. Technically, we've got a years of experience in handling the pandemic, and most importantly, what would the lessons learned be then?
Now, with the numbers rising, how has this been looked at as well by investors?
The COVID-19 pandemic has provided or has brought to us a big challenge. And this challenge is being addressed at different levels. Public and private sector are responding as best into this particular situation. From an investor standpoint, what we are seeing is, first and foremost, is about them activating and working out their business continuity planning, their BCP. And this has also, in turn, been about rolling out all these activities across not just Malaysia, but across the world wherever they operate. Certainly, the operations or the level of the pandemic has been different across regions, across countries. And with the up and down in terms of the cases and the other activities, this is where it becomes a bit tricky, and investors but continue to work on and continue to be reliant on their business plans that they have been tweaking towards facing the pandemic.
So looking at how Malaysia handles the pandemic is obviously one of the criteria taken by investors. What about political stability?
That's a challenging question there, in regards that with the pandemic in the picture today, we have seen notably a change in the government back in 2019. And this is an important step as well. However, what has been the pillar of strength would be the public servants, the civil servants that have continued to be operating regardless of who has been in the office. And about rolling out the number of activities that they do. Specifically for us, InvestKL, we are under the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, which has always been the pillar or the economic frontliners with regards to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic.
So with other ASEAN countries, our neighbours, basically all fighting for investors to come in, what stands us above the rest in terms of what can we attract them in?
Malaysia has gone into an evolution of investments, where we started with something in the 70s, 80s, the industrialized zone and industrialized nation capabilities, and moving forward, looking at how we want to attract the future type of investments. From that perspective, Malaysia can differentiate itself with other ASEAN countries in terms of what have our experience been in the past 20-30 years in many of the leading sectors, and what we are capable of coming up with in the next few, in the next years. What's important here is the past 20, 30 years is about building capabilities and competencies. And with that homework done in the past 20, 30 years, that have also helped us to go up the value chain. We are hearing much louder these days about the Industry 4.0, that particular initiative that's being launched by the government, and that's the backbone of how we want to attract investments into the future. Malaysia provides that sophisticated marketplace or platform where it's not too big, it's not too small in terms of markets, but it's the penetration as well as the thriving ecosystem is key that could differentiate us from other investment fraternities. The other aspect that we have been always hearing from investors are our skillful, multi-talented talent availability. And that's something that we should be proud of, because from InvestKL's perspective, as we have been attracting large multinational investments to set up their regional hubs here in Greater Kuala Lumpur, we have seen a lot of success. And these people have been recognizing Malaysian talent as a key pillar towards their activities, not just in Malaysia, but also in the region.
Thank you, Azmi. We've just got to go for a very quick commercial break. And when we return, we will discuss more on making Malaysia attractive to investors. But before that, find us on Twitter and share your thoughts on addressing the challenges in 2021. You're still tuning in to Money Matters as we speak to the Chief Executive Officer of InvestKL Corporation. Now, Azmi, which are the latest firms which have picked KL to locate its regional headquarters through InvestKL's initiatives?
Alhamdulillah, when we ended December 2020, we had a cumulative 103 multinationals with their regional hubs here in Greater Kuala Lumpur. Specifically from 2020, we attracted 12 firms. What's interesting in 2020 is we saw a pivot towards more investors from Asia. And that's where it gets a bit more interesting. From a sector perspective, we saw the investments in 2020 in consumer products, industrial products, as well as the digital economy. In the likes of a Chinese company that's very much involved in telecommunications, infrastructure, and so on, with setting up their regional hub here in Greater Kuala Lumpur. A well-known Japanese company in engineering, global engineering, setting up, which is something quite unique, their global hub here, the first outside of Japan. and that's very, very significant in that respect. Following to that, a European company who produces contact lenses. They've got their regional hub here for Asia Pacific, here in Greater KL. And the other example would be a US firm that specializes in pet foods, pet health, and pet products with their regional hub here in Greater Kuala Lumpur. It's a mix and match of many industries and many activities, but one thing I can confirm across all these investments are there's a heavy focus towards big data and analytics.
So the fact that they are already in and you've been engaging with them as well, what are their main concerns after they have set up here?
Certainly. This is where, for us, it's not just about attracting investments. Just to take a step back, in March 2020, when the MCO started, we decided to relook at our plans. And that's where we wanted to see how we can carve out a particular strategy, which we call here today as protect, retain, and attract. What that means is about protecting the current investors, at the same time to retain them, which will also result in retaining jobs. And that will also be attracting newer investments. Right. Why we wanted to do this is simply because there needs to be a stability from an operational red tape standpoint. There could be certain challenges during the past year. The political environment, sometimes it gets a bit noisy, so that's a bit worrying as well. The economic growth and recovery, still uncertain, and also another part is an uneven economic recovery that we are seeing today. So those are three of the main concerns that the investors have with the current situation.
Right. Well, what about those that are planning to come in? Do you have any figures that you are engaging? Because you have announced as well that you, if I may read from here, that InvestKL has set a target to attract 100 multinational corporations into Malaysia. So is that a challenge for you, or is this a number which is difficult to achieve?
That's also part of our 10-year plan. A 10-year plan that was launched recently that would cover 2021 to 2030. The commitment to us is to bring in an additional 20 billion ringgit in investments. This is a number that we have worked with the Ministry, MITI, with regards to that. Technically, it will equate into 10 MNCs, or 100 MNCs over a 10-year period. Yes, it is challenging, but we are seeing a healthy funnel that's being developed. Inquiries are ongoing. Some deals would take 3 months, some deals would take 3 years to negotiate and to discuss. So it's very uncertain in that manner. However, we are happy to say that in the first quarter, we are quite good in terms of our numbers with regards to the investments that we have attracted. Over and above that, it's not just about attracting investments. I'd like to also share that on 6th of April, when we did our results announcement for 2020, we also launched what we said, the Greater Kuala Lumpur Life Lab. Yes. It's about increasing the complexity of investments into the country. It's not just about coming in, setting up a hub, of providing services. It's about creating an innovation and R&D culture. One
more question before we go for our next commercial break. I'll have to refer to this because Malaysia's ranking in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business globally, in 2018 we were number 24, 2019 we were 15, and in 2020 we were number 12. So, in your opinion, what sort of reforms basically led to this strong performance?
Malaysia has put in a commitment. And this is a commitment not just with us, across ministries and agencies. It's about how can we continue to improve our rankings. It is a long-term plan that we are committed towards. InvestKL is part of it. It's about clarity, continuity, and certainty. This put together to ensure that wherever there are touch points to government as well as the private sector, how that can be eased about. It goes towards the simplest example of applying for a license, and going to also applying for credit. So all that put together is about ease of doing business. What's most important is, it's not just about us doing the initiative. We must continue to be benchmarking ourselves with the best. This is about taking note or taking reference to World Bank reports, World Economic Forum reports, to see that we are guided in the right direction.
Right. Thank you, Azmi. Hold that thought. We've just got to go for a very quick commercial break. We're talking to the Chief Executive Officer of InvestKL Corporation, so stay with us. Thank you for keeping us company, and we will discuss further on what's in store for the Greater KL with our guest, the Chief Executive Officer of InvestKL Corporation, Muhammad Azmi Zulkifli. Now, before we went for the break, you were also talking about the concerns by the companies that have already set up shop in Malaysia, so to speak. So what are the other issues that they have given to you, or MITI for the example?
That's an important question today, Calvin. At the moment, we are seeing a good interaction as well as exchange between government, us included, as well as the industry. And this is about collaboration, it's also about discussions. It's not a literal change of SOPs, for example. It's not a literal change of or an implementation of an MCO. It's about a discussion that we are seeing directly with investors as well as with the business chambers, which are also important in this respect. With these particular concerns, more of this is about their ability to continue to conduct their business. Mm-hmm. And with that as well, it's not about just these large companies running their activities, it's also about every other company that's part of their value chain. A particular company would need to have certain supplies of boxes, plastics, pencils, utilities, and so on, and it also a complete ecosystem that needs to be taken care of. That's something that they would ask for our attention, not just particular industries from that perspective. The policies with regards to investments needs to be clearer. There were a number of activities that were mentioned. For example, even the recent announcement on the national investment aspirations. Mm-hmm. They are excited to know more. And this is where we like to share, and the government will be sharing a lot more in the coming days to come as well.
Mm-hmm. So this pandemic has sort of given a kickstart for Malaysia to move forward with its digitalization plan. So obviously there's a lot of potential here. So how does InvestKL basically see this?
We are seeing exciting programs or projects by MNCs in the pipeline. And these are some of the things that we probably would not have seen unless we continue to explore and talk to these people. Some of these applications that they are doing or these activities that they are doing have been implemented in their home countries. And now it's about how can they roll out not just in Malaysia, but for the region. This is where Greater Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia provides that ideal platform. Not a large population, but very sophisticated in nature to trial and test and to apply certain things that they see could be applicable to the country.
Azmi, final question before we go. Looking at InvestKL's strategic short-term plan, because everyone needs to talk about short-term planning right now because we can't really see what's in store in the future because of the pandemic. So what is InvestKL's short-term plan from 2021 to, say, 2023?
In the past years, if we look at our history from 2011, our portfolio of investments have been spread across 50% of the investors are from Europe, 25% are from Americas, and the rest 25% are from Asia. Last year, we saw a pivot towards Asia. We would imagine that would continue to be happening, and we would certainly be working on that perspective about how can we look at these opportunities as we move forward. Right. We are also more focused towards activities, moving away from traditional industries or sectors. Going back to the point in saying that today every industry is applying digital, is applying big data, is applying analytics. And if an industry chooses not to do that, they will be left behind.
Right.
So a lot of realization we are seeing where we can focus on the activities and attract these right investments while creating the right type of jobs for Malaysians.
Right. Azmi, thank you very much for appearing on Money Matters. It has been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you, Kelvin. Pleasure to be here.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you once again, Mohammad Azmi, for joining us on this episode of Money Matters. Like I said, we really appreciate it. Please join us again next week, same day and time, for another in-depth discussion with more money insights that matter. Until next time, I'm Zahir Kelvin Ong Abdullah. Thank you for watching and stay safe.